through you. God is not joking around with us at all. He is for real.
Praise God.
When you
Praise
don't
God.
understand, trust in his plan. Let's bow our heads. Let's bow our heads. Good God in heaven, we come before you now in great need, pressured by a great many things, including our own inclinations to move far from you. We ask, Father, that in your goodness, in your love, in your graciousness, in your tenderness, you may see fit to provide us some source of power now, that we might yet believe, that we may yet have hope, that we may yet hold on amidst the many things that surround us. We leave ourselves in your care. We ask, Lord, that you would fill us with your Spirit even now. Remove me so that you are heard, you are seen, you are understood. I pray this now, Father, in your Son's name and by his salvic blood. Amen. I wonder if you'd be kind enough to turn with me to the book of Hebrews. We have been dabbling in Hebrews for actually a couple of weeks now, and now on our Vespers, we are also in the book of Hebrews, and we are, I think we've just started the second chapter in Hebrews in our Vespers. If you have not understood the person of Christ, the purpose of Christ, the majesty of Christ, the desire of Christ, the mandate of Christ, the actions of Christ, the advocacy of Christ, you need to read the book of Hebrews to understand what he is meant to do for you. But towards the tail end of the book, in the end of chapter 10, going forward, we then have the response that we ought to have to the majesty, to the power, to the dominion of Jesus Christ. And it comes to us through the notion of believing, of having faith. And for our time today, I would like to focus our attention on one short phrase. I still believe. No matter what's happening, I still believe. Turn with me to the 12th chapter. Let's see if we can't define this belief that we have. The 12th chapter, in the first verse, it says, "Now faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen." Faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. It is the substance of something I've not yet received, but it is real enough. It's the reality of something that I have not yet gotten. I'm still hoping for it, but it's a real thing. The fact that I've not been able to walk through the golden streets of heaven does not preclude the fact that heaven exists. Heaven is the substance of my hope for my time there. And it is the evidence of things not seen. It is evidence, it's proof that though I have not seen it, it exists. So I have not seen Christ burst through the clouds, but I will experience that. I have not been in heaven on those golden streets. I have not seen the angels in their choir. I've not heard and felt the vibrations of their voice in worship, but it does not change the fact.
Amen. Praise the
that
Lord.
Heaven exists. I still believe. This morning when we had our Sabbath school was begun with an opening prayer. Brother Bazil pleaded with the Lord. Father, we are pressed about by many issues. And in part, his concern as he spoke to the Lord was, folk on the outside of our truth are looking at us on the inside of this truth and asking a seemingly logical question: where is your God? as you deal with all of this foolishness. I thought you guys would be protected. I thought you would be better off. They are cynical and they are doubtful, and it's true that they exist, but I must still believe even when others are cynical. I must believe when others doubt. I cannot give up hope and be doubtful because of someone else's lack of faith. I still believe. I still believe that he is the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords. I still believe that if you go looking for the cross, it's going to be empty. I still believe that if you find the tomb, it's going to be empty. I still believe that the word tells me that he has gone to heaven and is advocating on the right hand of his Father in glory for you and for me. I still believe. I believe that the blood that he shed still works and still covers me. I still 150% believe. And if he's done all of this, it's to one purpose. I need to be in glory with him. And I believe that he will come one day again. I've not seen him burst the clouds, but I still believe. The tail end of this verse here, now faith is a substance of things hoped for and the evidence of things not seen. It says, by it the elders obtained a good report, meaning the folk who came before. And then 5 names are mentioned. Abel is mentioned as it speaks about the fact that Abel believed and acted in his belief and offered a better sacrifice than his brother Cain. And he was viewed as righteous because he acted in his belief. Enoch was translated because of his belief, because of faith. And it says, because he had this testimony that he pleased God. Then Paul writes out what it means to please God. He says, without faith, it is impossible to please God, for those who come to him must first believe that he is and that he's a rewarder of those that diligently seek him. I must still believe. It jumps to Noah. Noah acted on the word of God, obeyed the word of God when Noah could not spell the word rain or flood. It was something that never existed, but he acted on it for 120 years. And he inherited by his faith a righteousness. Abraham left his country, obeyed God, acted on his belief through faith, and went to a place without a GPS. He had no idea where he was going, and yet he acted in faith. And it says in the Bible that he was looking for a city whose builder and maker was God. He was not looking for a temporal city. We'll talk about that soon, but he was looking for a real city, an inheritance in eternal glory with God. Abraham's wife, Sarah, it says lastly that Sarah believed that through her faith she conceived a child when she was long beyond childbearing age. Why? Because she counted him faithful who promised. The promise was that the child would come through Abraham and that he would be the father of many nations. And even though in their 90s, it seemed like this could not be possible, the same God that made Adam and Eve made a child in her. And from that one child, many nations that the Bible tells us they're more than the sand on the seashore, than the stars in the heavens. And she counted God as faithful. She didn't know how he was going to do it. She just knew that he would do it if he said he was going to do it. Despite her age, she still had to believe. Despite never seeing rain, Noah still had to believe. Despite not knowing where, Abram still had to believe. Despite not understanding exactly what the sacrifice was supposed to be for Christ, Abel followed and was still true. And what can we say about Enoch? Enoch believed so much, God said, you know what? You just come up here with me. I've got to believe no matter what's taking place. I have to still believe because my belief in God is what pleases him. At the end of this narrative around these 5 elders and their belief, we come to the study portion of our time. Look with me at verse 11 through 14. Hebrews, I'm sorry, it is 13, I'm looking at the wrong page. 13 through 16, and read this with me. These all died, speaking about these five. Now we know Enoch did not die. These all died in faith, having not received the promises, but having seen them afar off. Remember, our first verse is, faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things I've never seen. And these all died in faith, having not received the promises, but having seen them afar off, in their faith, in their belief, and were persuaded of them, convinced of them. And then it said, embrace them, which is to say, they approached it as if it was going to happen now. When you and I are on our knees and we're asking God to come in our rightful, truthful, faithful way, we're expecting that he will show up. When we ask God, come save me now, we're expecting he'll show up. When you envision what will happen in heaven, what it will look like when the clouds part, what will Jesus look like? Will he just beam and be the most glorious thing that you ever seen? When his voice utters, that it will be the most wonderful melody that your ears have ever sensed. When you think about those things, I'm telling you that you're living a life of faith, that you're looking forward to something that you cannot describe, but you know that it's real. The Bible says, I have not seen, nor have ear heard the wonderful things that God has planned for his people. These all died in faith, having not received the promise, but in their hearts, having received them from afar off. And they were so convinced of them, they were so persuaded by them, that they embraced them as real, as something that would happen now to them. And they confess that they were strangers and pilgrims on earth. So the hope that they had, the faith that they had, is that they would pass from here to there, that they would leave this earth and go to glory. And this is speaking about Abel. This is speaking about Enoch. He got there. This is speaking about Noah. This is speaking about Abraham. This is speaking about Sarah. All these folk knew of glory and wanted to go there. And except for Enoch, these rest died believing that the God who promised it would be able to deliver it. And you've got to believe. I know you're dealing with a pandemic. I know that you're dealing with loss. I know that you're dealing with financial straits. I know that you're dealing with some mental challenges in the press of this time. I know that it's tough. I know, because I'm going through it too, but I still believe that Jesus is going to come through. I believe that he's going to rescue me in the moment. I believe that larger than that, he does not see 1650 Rupert Road in Pottstown, Pennsylvania as my true address, that he's got a mansion there waiting for me. I believe that. And even though I've waited for 49 years, I still believe. And even though others doubt him, I still believe. And I'm as persuaded as these folk are. And just to make the point that they believed that they were looking for a place whose maker and builder was God, look at verse 14. For they that say such things, meaning they confessed, in verse 13 it says, they confessed that they were strangers and pilgrims in the earth. For they that say such things declare plainly that they seek a country. Now watch me. And truly, 15, if they had been mindful of that country from when they came out, they might have had opportunity to have returned. What this is saying is, they're seeking a country. And if the country they were seeking was the country they just came from, they had plenty of opportunities to go back to that country. Therefore, their country they came from is not where they're going. They've been looking for a country whose maker and builder is God. 16. But now they desire a better country, that is, a heavenly. Wherefore, God is not ashamed to call them to be their God, for he hath prepared them a city. There's a promise that Jesus makes to the disciples and to you and I in John 14. You believe in God, believe also in me. In my Father's house are many mansions. If it were not so, I would have told you. I go to prepare a place for you. And if I go and prepare a place for you, I will for sure come again and receive you unto myself, that where I am, there ye may be also. Paul is writing about this. He says here that God is not ashamed to be their God, for he hath prepared for them a city. When you wake up this morning, was your mind on Jesus bursting the clouds? Because the only thing that was on Enoch's mind was getting to glory. Was your mind on the golden streets? Because this Bible is telling me that even for Sarah, that's where her mind was. Their belief, their goal, their agenda was singular. Obedience to God to make it to the kingdom. And they dealt with famine, they dealt with loss, they dealt with heartache, they dealt with their own sins. Sarah ultimately had faith, but she laughed at the idea that in her old age, and she had to live with the recompense of that laughter, of that cynicism. She had to deal with that from God. And you're going through some things where you doubt, and God has got to talk to you a little firmly about that doubt. Abraham lied and said, oh, no, this is not my wife, this is my sister, a half lie, because he did not depend on God. These folk weren't perfect. They ultimately had their belief, their faith prevail. The only one who comes out of this pack unscathed is Enoch. And there's not much we can say about Abel. His time with us in Scripture is so brief, it would appear. Yes, but he was not translated. Enoch was. What do we do with this belief? When you watch the news and you hear that 26 more states are spiking, and you listen to talk radio or you listen to friends, and you understand there is a pollution of untruths that are coming in and changing how God's people ought to have their minds focused, that we are covered by a cloud of things that are of this world and not God. I still have to believe through all of that. I have to believe because the Bible has told me I've got evidence. I would not be here now speaking to you about God were it not for the fact that God has been good to me. Poor me, foolish me. You would not be where you are. God has given you ample evidence of who he is and reasons to believe. Some of you came out of hospitals you should not have come out of. You ought to believe. Some of you have children that have escaped death, though it was real close. You should absolutely believe. Some of you know that you were wrong, but God covered you with his grace. You had better believe. In the middle of all of this, you've got to still believe. But believe what? The Bible is full of these. I still have to believe that the sufferings of this time are not worthy to be compared with the glory which shall be revealed in us, we're told in Romans 8. I still have to believe that nothing shall separate us from the love of Christ, and not tribulation, not COVID, not distress, not pandemic, not a riot. I've got to believe that no perception, no famine, no nakedness, no peril, no war, no president, no Congress, no Senate, no counselor, no mayor, no governor, no police can separate me from the love of God. I've got to still believe that while all these things are there, I've got something to hold on to. My faith is the substance of that thing that I have not yet held. And it is the evidence of that place I've not been to yet. And in the midst of all of this, I have to still believe. I have to still believe that in the middle of COVID that we are more than conquerors through Jesus Christ who loves us. I've got to believe that neither death nor life nor angels nor principalities or powers, nothing can separate us from the love of God. I've got to believe, like Job says, that my Redeemer liveth and he will stand on the latter day there alive for me to see. I've got to believe that while COVID threatens the bodies and the lives of men and women, that through Jesus Christ, yet in our flesh, shall we see God on the latter day. I've got to believe that though we are troubled on every side, that we can be not distressed because of who Christ is with us, that though we're perplexed, that we don't have to be in despair, that we're persecuted, but we're not ever forsaken, that we're cast down, but we are not destroyed. You're on Zoom today, praising God, getting something from his word. God has not forsaken you, and because of that, you have to believe. I believe that they that wait upon the Lord, as Isaiah says, can renew their strength. I believe that Jesus' promise is true when he says, all of you in Chestnut Hill who come to me, I will in no wise cast out. I have to believe him at his word. I have to believe that when he says, in my Father's house are many mansions, and if it were not so, I would have told you that. I have to believe that he says, if I go and prepare a place for you, I will come again. That has to be singular true in my mind. I've got to wake up wondering, how much closer are we to this thing that I believe? It's got to be the driving force in my life. I've got to believe that my finances, as dubious as they may be, are not enough to separate me from my singular goal. I've got to believe that as challenging as our social landscape is currently, that it's not enough. No riot is enough. No unrest is enough. No racist remark is enough. No celebration of blackness is enough. None of these things are enough, larger than my God. I've got to believe that in the middle of all of this, with all the opinions, there's only one truth that matters. Jesus is coming soon, and he plans to take us to glory. I have to believe what he tells me in Revelation, that he that overcometh shall be clothed in white raiment. I know some of us are dealing with challenges now, and we couldn't go to the store to buy something. And maybe even before COVID, I was joking around with Lennox. He doesn't believe me. He talks about my fancy suits and what have you, and he doesn't know there are holes in the pockets and I've got to sew up stuff and what have you. And it may look good, but I know what the real story is. Yeah. But when Jesus comes, if I can overcome, I won't need these threads anymore. I'm going to have a white robe, and I'm going to have a palm in my hand. I'm going to be able to have that. I still believe that. He also tells me, and I believe it, that he that overcometh will I grant to sit with me in my throne. He that overcometh will I make a pillar in the temple of my God, and he shall not leave that temple ever, ever, ever. I still believe that these things are true. I still believe what he tells me is sobering and true. That behold, I come quickly, and my reward is with me, to give every man according to their work. If that is true, the question then remains, am I living according to my calling? Am I living according to my belief? Have I gotten cynical because church folk are not always nice? Have I gotten doubtful because though I've demanded that Jesus do something, he has been patient and not answered me in my recklessness? Am I concerned that Jesus does not hear my worry? And so I don't study as often because I don't think it matters. If Jesus is coming with his reward quickly, and if I'm an Adventist, a believer in the second advent of Jesus Christ, if my desire is to live eternally with him, could I put aside everything else and focus on Jesus? Paul asks us to do this with the text that Diana read for us so beautifully earlier. Book of Hebrews, chapter 12, verses 1 and 2. In chapter 11, we are given this great picture of these five who have been faithful. And then if you take a look at chapter 11, verse 32, it says, "And what more can I say? For the time would fail me to talk about Gideon and of Barak and Samson and Jephthah, of David and also Samuel and also the prophets, who through their faith subdued kingdoms and wrought righteousness and obtained promises, stopped the mouth of lions, quenched the violence of fire, escaped the edge of the sword, out of weakness were made strong, waxed valiant in fight, turned to flight the armies of the aliens. Women received their dead raised to life again, and others were tortured, not accepting deliverance, that they might obtain a better resurrection. And others had trial of cruel mockings and scourgings, yea, moreover, of bonds and imprisonments. They were stoned, they were sawn asunder, were tempted, were slain with the sword. They wandered about in sheepskins and goatskins, being destitute, afflicted, tormented, of whom the world was not worthy. They wandered in deserts and in mountains and in dens and in caves of the earth. And all these, having obtained a good report through their faith, their belief, received not the promise." But God was thinking about you and me. Look at verse 40. God having provided some better thing for us, you and me, in 2020, that they without us should not be made perfect. He refused to come then because he was thinking about you now. And in chapter 12, verse 1 and 2, Paul peaks in his argument here. "Wherefore, seeing that we are compassed about with such a great cloud of witnesses, since we have such evidence around us, what's the most reasonable thing to do? Let us lay aside every weight and the sin which so easily beset us, and let us run with patience the race that is set before us." My race is different than yours. Your landscape, your track is different. It might have more hills, might have more water. Another person's might be more wooded, or challenges are different. But since we can see that God comes through for all these folk, we don't need any more evidence than this. Let us run with faith. We still have to believe. And he tells you how. Verse 2. "Looking unto Jesus, the author and finisher of our faith." The original language says the looking there is to say looking away from all else and focused on Jesus. So I'm looking away from all else and I'm focused on Jesus. Why? Because he's the author of my faith. He's the one that begins it in me. And it says here, he's the finisher of our faith, not the close, but finisher here means perfecter. He molds it and shapes it. I still believe, with all the challenges that we have, that we are an awesome church. I still believe that God reigns in your heart. I still believe that when folk treat you unkind, that God still loves you. I still believe that when you disappoint God, he does not give up on you. I still believe that his disposition towards you is one of grace, of long suffering. You remember the story of the prodigal son, how the prodigal son comes back home and the older brother is upset and he folds his arms and he refuses to go in to celebrate, the father comes out and reasons with him. And the story ends without the older son going in, but it also ends with the father not going back in either. He still believes in the older son. And in your celebration of faith or your rebellion against it, God says, when he looks at you, I still believe. I've sent my son because I still believe. I've allowed the things to happen to you because I still believe. I know that you're strong enough to deal with it. I still believe. So there are these two beliefs on both sides of the eternal fence. On the one side, us, holding faithfully onto that which has been promised. And we still believe. And God on his throne, looking down on our lives, our challenges, our pitfalls, or inclinations to sin. And he stubbornly still believes that you can make it. My friends, faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. You ought to still believe because Jesus does as well. Let's bow our heads. Father in heaven, we are grateful that you've not given up on us, that you still love us, that you still have compassion towards us, that you still call on us. We are grateful that your son's blood still does work. When called upon, still does cover us. When believed in, still does save us. We ask, Lord, that everyone in the hearing of your spirit through my voice might accept the fact that you still believe in them, that they are strong enough with you, that they can overcome. Remove the weight of doubt and of guilt and of shame, and renew in their hearts, in their minds, in their core, a belief that will not go away, so that together we might still believe. I pray this in your son's name and by his saving blood. Amen.